There is a house on an ordinary street where the mailbox is dented. The lawn is a little overgrown, and the car in the driveway is 8 years old with a crack in the windshield nobody has bothered to fix. If you drove past it, you would not look twice. Inside that house lives a man worth just over $4 million, and today we are going to follow his entire day hour by hour, because the way he spends an ordinary Tuesday explains more about wealth than any stock tip ever could. Call him Harold. Harold is 61. He spent 34 years as a facilities manager for a mid-sized hospital, and he never once earned more than $92,000 in a single year. Nothing about his career sounds like a path to millions, and yet here he is, and the reason is not a secret formula. It is a sequence of small, repeated decisions that most people would find almost embarrassingly boring. Let's walk through them. 6:12 a.m. Harold wakes up without an alarm, the way people do when nothing about their morning is being forced on them. He makes coffee in the same machine he has owned for 11 years. He does not check a stock ticker. He does not check his portfolio. In fact, Harold looks at his investment accounts roughly 4 times a year, and that single habit alone has probably made him hundreds of thousands of dollars, because the single biggest threat to an investor's returns is not the market, it is the investor, checking too often, feeling too much, and reacting to a number that was never meant to be read daily. 6:40 a.m. Harold walks 2 miles around his neighborhood, the same loop he has walked for over a decade. While he walks, he thinks about nothing in particular, which is itself worth noticing. Harold's mind is not consumed by money, because money stopped being an emergency for him decades ago. That calm is not a personality trait he was born with. It is the output of a system he built when he was 31 years old and never touched again. Here is that system. The year Harold turned 31, he set up an automatic transfer. 15% of every paycheck moved into his retirement account before he ever saw it land in his checking balance. He did not decide to save that month. He decided once, and then he got out of his own way for 30 years. That single decision, repeated automatically 52 times a year for 3 decades, is the entire engine behind the $4 million sitting quietly in his accounts today. 15% of $92,000 a year, invested and left alone at the market's long-run average return, does not sound like a fortune. It sounds like a rounding error. But money invested at around 10% a year roughly doubles every 7 years, which means Harold's first real contributions, made back when gas cost about $1 a gallon, have doubled 5 separate times since then. That is not luck. That is arithmetic, given enough time to work. 8:15 a.m. Harold eats eggs at his kitchen table and reads an actual newspaper, one he still pays $9 a month for out of habit more than necessity. He is not frugal in a way that looks painful. He simply never developed the reflex to spend money proving something to people he will never see again. When his neighbors bought a new truck 2 years ago, Harold felt nothing. Not judgment, not envy. His sense of who he is was never wired to what sits in his driveway. 9:30 a.m. Harold drives to volunteer at the same hospital he used to manage. 3 mornings a week, unpaid. This is worth sitting with for a second, because it is the part almost nobody expects. Harold does not need the money from working, and he still chooses structure, purpose, and a place to be useful. Financial freedom, for Harold, was never about doing nothing. It was about being able to choose what he does, without a paycheck deciding it for him. That is the actual prize at the end of all the boring decisions. Not a yacht, not a mansion. The simple ability to spend your Tuesday exactly how you want to. 12 p.m., lunch is a sandwich he made at home. Harold has eaten at restaurants maybe twice this month, not because he cannot afford it, but because the habit of cooking at home was set so long ago it never occurred to him to change it. Here is the number that makes this matter. The average American spends around $300 a month eating out. Invested instead at 10% a year, that same $300 becomes close to $2 million over 40 years. Harold never ran that calculation consciously. He simply kept a habit from his leaner years and let compounding quietly turn it into a fortune he never had to think about. 2 p.m. Harold sits down for 15 minutes, opens his brokerage account, and does almost nothing. He does not trade. He does not chase a hot stock a coworker mentioned. Years ago, during a downturn that terrified nearly everyone he knew, Harold watched his balance fall by nearly 40%. He did not sell. He kept buying on the same schedule, at the same low, unglamorous amount, because he had decided years earlier, in a calm moment, exactly what he would do when the panic arrived. That decision, made in advance by a version of Harold who was never actually panicking, is the reason today's Harold has $4 million instead of a permanent scar from a crash he sold into at the bottom. 4:30 p.m. Harold gets a call from his granddaughter about a school project. He talks to her for 40 minutes. There is no meeting he is rushing to, no deadline eating the conversation. This is the part of the quiet millionaire's day that never makes it into anyone's fantasy of getting rich, and it is arguably the entire point of getting rich in the first place. Time given back to the person who earned it. 6:00 p.m. dinner. Harold checks his high-yield savings account, the one holding his emergency fund, currently earning around 4% a year. He moved that money out of his old bank 15 years ago, when it was earning close to nothing, and that one unremarkable decision has quietly paid him thousands of dollars he never had to work for. 8:45 p.m. Harold reads for half an hour and goes to bed. Early. No stress spiral about the market. No late-night scrolling comparing his life to someone else's highlight reel. Just a calm, uneventful end to a calm, uneventful day. The kind of day that, repeated 11,000 times over 3 decades, quietly built a fortune almost nobody around him ever suspected existed. And that is the real secret hiding inside a day like Harold's. There was no dramatic scene, no lucky break, no big reveal, no single moment where everything changed. There was only a stack of ordinary hours, spent the same unremarkable way, again and again, for so long that the math eventually had no choice but to catch up. The quiet millionaire is not quiet because they are hiding something impressive. They are quiet because the whole strategy was never meant to be loud in the first place. So here is the real question worth taking with you today. If someone followed you around for a single ordinary Tuesday, what would your habits be quietly building 30 years from now? Tell me in the comments what your version of Harold's morning walk is. The one small boring habit you already have that might be worth more than you realize. And if this changed how you think about an average day, stick around, because next time, we're going to break down the exact numbers behind that 15% rule and how to build your own version of it starting with whatever you have right now.